Hi everyone, I'm Ms Seddon, and this week we're going to be making a very simple sauce. The reason being that we're going to learn one of the key cooking skills that we need to know, how to dice an onion. So we're going to make sure that we are ready for practical or mise en place, that we have removed jewellery, washed our hands, sanitised and cleaned our surfaces, put our hair up, donned an apron, and that we have collected our equipment, and we'll go through our ingredients now. You will need 2 400-gram tins of chopped tomatoes, although you could also use passata. You will need 1 white onion, 1 to 2 cloves of garlic, some basil, dry basil, or you could use herbs. If you have fresh basil, even better, but I sadly don't this week, and salt and pepper to taste. One of the most important skills that you will learn in cooking is how to dice an onion. We're going to go through that now. But just a little bit of background first of all. You get different types of onions. You get white or brown onions like these ones, and you get red onions like these ones. Don't worry about the different sizes, they just come in different sizes. Now, white or brown onions are best for cooking with, and they'll turn translucent when they're cooked. Red onions are best for eating raw. They're sweeter, they're crunchier, things like coleslaw for instance, they lend themselves better too. You can cook with them, but they tend to catch a little bit more, and you have to be more careful when you're cooking them. So we're going to focus on the white onion today, and we need to go through a few different stages to make sure that we are doing this sufficiently. So the very first thing that we're going to do is to cut it in half. Now when I say in half, we need to make sure that we're following the right half. We want to make sure we're not going to cut it the wrong way. So you'll see here that we have the stalk. Okay, this is where the leaves and the flowers would grow from. And down here you'll see that this is the root. You can see the little root hairs growing out here. It's a bit more obvious in this one. There you go. So we want to make sure that we are always cutting from pole to pole, not around the equator. Okay, so from pole to pole, not around the equator. So we're going to cut it in first, because if it rolls, what do? We cut it in half. So we're going to cut it in half from pole to pole, from stalk to root. I'm going to use the bridge technique. I'm holding my knife nice and firmly with my thumb on the side like a magnet, ready to go, an extension of my arm. So through, a bit of a sawing action, they can be quite tough, all the way down, all the way through. There we go, and now we have 2 flat sides to place down. The next thing that we're going to do is to cut off the stem in each instance. So I'm going to keep my fingers clear using the claw. I don't want to cut off too much of the stalk, but enough to actually make it easy for myself, and I'm putting it in my bits bowl to one side. Claw, strong arm, bits bowl. There we go. Next, we're going to peel it. Don't bother trying to peel it first, honestly, it's so much more difficult. This way you'll find it a lot easier. Now if you just get your thumbnail underneath, you'll be able to peel the papery parts back. There we go. This one's fighting with me a bit today. There we go. And we also want to make sure that we're removing any root hairs and any bits of papery outer off the chopping board as well, because we don't want to get in that food. It's not going to be very appetizing. If you're particularly struggling, or if the onion has quite a leathery outer layer, you can just remove the top layer. Obviously we don't want to do this on onions that don't need it, because otherwise they're just wasting food, but just for the demonstration purposes I'm showing you now. There we go. Okay, the next step we're going to do is to slice it parallel to the chopping board. Okay, parallel meaning two lines that never touch. So parallel to the chopping board, if chopping board's coming here, parallel this way. Okay, so you probably want to cut it just the once. If it's a very large onion, or if you're feeling a little bit more confident, you could cut it twice, 1, 2. I'm just going to cut it once for now. I'm going to use my claw, but I'm going to keep my fingers right at the very top. If I'm holding it back here and my knife were to slip, I'm going to cut my fingers. Okay, so fingers right up the top, coming down nice and low. I'm using a sawing action and a bit of a wiggle. And I'm not going to cut it all the way through. Okay, I've got it still attached to the root, about a finger's width from the root. Okay, so I'm going to do that to both. Remember, coming down nice and low, fingers clear, give it a wiggle, use a bit of a sawing action, go far but not all the way through. Next, we're going to cut columns. Okay, I'm facing you, so I'm going to cut columns this way. So for me, I'm going to be doing it, cutting columns towards the root. So the tip of my knife towards the root. I'm going to use the claw technique, and the closer the columns are, the better. So I'm putting the tip of the knife into the onion and pushing down. Tip of the knife, pushing down. Tip of the knife, pushing down. You can use a bit of a sawing action if you need to, if your knife is not very sharp. Now as I get closer to the end, you can see I haven't really got much to hold on to. And that's okay. Now I can use the bridge technique, but just being really, really careful of my thumb. So use the tip of the knife all the way down. There we go. So you can see my columns here, like a little fan, like a little flower, like so. Do that to the other one. Tip of the knife all the way down. Using my claw, always. If my knife were to slip, the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to catch my nails, and then just for the last cut, minding my thumb. Okay, we are nearly there. The very last thing we're going to do is we're going to do our dice. So we're going to cut it, it's like columns, but this time we're going towards the root. So we've cut it this way and this way, now we're going to cut it this way. We'll have lots of even, tiny squares. So fingers over the top. Now this time, rather than just balanced on the top, because the onion will like to spread out, to fan out, I'm actually going to use my fingers in the claw, but my little finger and my thumb are holding it on either side, so I can actually pick it up just like that. Okay, really keeping everything together. So all the way down, and there's my dice. Keep my fingers clear, always. And as I get towards the end, if I've got a little bit of extra, I can even just cut it free from the root, like so. Making sure I'm not getting bits of root hairs, bits of stuff that I don't want in there. And now I've left the root behind. Now the reason that we leave the root fairly intact is because it's the root end that holds most of the chemicals that makes us cry. If we limit the amount of times that we cut into the root, we are limiting the number of times that we're actually going to release those chemicals up into the air that make us cry. So I've managed to do all of that. Can't feel any irritation in my eyes at all. If you get a little bit, that's understandable. You're cutting an onion. It's probably going to happen, but this way you'll guarantee that you are less likely to cry. So I'm going to finish it off for my other side now. Remember, pinky, thumb, holding on, all the way down, all the way down. If I want, I can turn it around, keep my fingers clear, and just cut a little bit more off and maximise the amount of food that I've got. Keep any bits that I don't want out of my food, and I've diced my onion. To prepare your garlic, if you need to get into a bulb or a head of garlic like this, you can just use your thumb or a knife to get it started and break it apart. Obviously I've done this for this one, so I'm just going to break out a couple of cloves, like so, I might do one more because it's not very big. There we go. Now you can peel it or not as you choose. If you wish to peel it, then the easiest way is to hold it using the claw technique. You're going to cut down into the root end, but not all the way through, so that you leave a little tab, and that means that you can peel off the outer layers really easily, like so. Now you don't have to peel them, you could just put them straight into your garlic crusher. So this is my one, I can strongly recommend it, it's a great design. I'm going to pop these in here and then put it over the top and then crush it like so. There we go. Now that's the first crush, but you always need to jiggle it around, give it a second go to get the rest of it out. There we go. And then you can just remove the peel out of the garlic crusher. And then you can clean that. So next what we need to do is to cook our onion and garlic. There we go, there's mine prepared. So please make sure of course that when we are cooking our pot handle is always to one side, not at the front, because of course if it catches we're going to make a mess and potentially someone could get hurt. So to the side. Now I have an electric cooker, yours might be similar or it might be gas, it might be very different, so check with the adult who's supervising you on how to start it up. So for me, I'm going to turn mine on. Now mine goes all the way up to 9, so I want it on a medium high heat, so for me that's going to be about a 6 or a 7. Mine's quite slow, it's going to take a minute or two to warm up. In the meantime, I can add in my oil. Now, I use olive oil, gives you a really authentic Italian flavour, but you could use coconut oil or you could use sunflower oil or vegetable oil or whatever you have access to. Now we need about a tablespoon in here to cook our onion and garlic. If you just want to put a little glug in, you can. If you're worried you're going to overestimate, then you can get yourself a tablespoon measure. Remember, tablespoon. And we know when it's the right amount, when it's level. In we go. My oil has warmed up now. I can tell because it's moving around to the bottom of the pan a lot more quickly, so it's less viscous. I'm going to add it in just a second. You're going to need either a wooden spoon or a wooden spatula. This one's preferable because it has a flat side where you can scrape the bottom of the pan and stop anything from sticking, but whatever you have access to. So I'm going to pop my onion and my garlic in. Make sure it's nice and low. You're using your hands. There it goes. There we go, and add in my garlic too. And I'm going to stir them around. I'm going to wait for that sizzle, which I'm just starting to get, and I'm going to leave that to cook for 5 minutes until the onion is translucent. And we'll come back then. So my onions are cooked, they're translucent. If they get a little bit of colour to them, that's okay, but just make sure they're not going to burn. And I'm just going to set this to one side for a second, and we can discuss how to add our tomatoes. So if you have a tin like this one, if you've got a ring pull, these are obviously easy to open, but they're a bit fiddly sometimes. So you want to start it off, get your thumbnail underneath, or you could use a knife for instance, go underneath, push it all the way forward, put your index finger on the top, put your thumb in the middle of it, pull back, remember I'm holding the can as well, pull back, and then put your thumb on the back of it and then pull it all the way, and then I like to give it a little wiggle to get it off at the end. Okay, it's tricky, so takes a bit of practice. So I'm going to add that in. Here we go, make sure you get all the food out of there. Get it even, run a little bit of water in there if you wanted to, give it a little swill and then pop it in as well. If you have a carton, the way that you want to do this is you want to pull the sides up, 1, 2, like so, and then you pop it, pop. Now we're going to cut the corner off one of them. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to tip it sideways because when I cut the corner I don't want it all to splash out. I'm going to cut the corner off carefully. There we go. And then I'm going to add that in. Make sure you get it all out. Give it a squeeze. You don't want to waste our food. There we go. Now cartons like this need to go in the bin. They can't be recycled, unfortunately. But once I've given this a rinse out, okay, make sure that we're not leaving food in it, otherwise it can't be recycled. It can go in our recycling. Now I don't have an unopened tin to show you how to use a tin opener in case you don't have a ring pull, but I can show you with the bottom of this one, thankfully. So when we use our can opener, you want to open up the legs like so, okay. This bit here is the bit that turns and this is the blade. So we're going to put the blade on the top, okay, facing nearly upwards. Most can openers are right-handed, so put it on the right-hand side. So the blade facing upwards, and you're going to press and crimp the bottom part in like so until it clicks, like so. Then you turn, 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 all the way around. You're going to hold onto the legs, you're going to turn all the way around. Some can openers are easier than others. All the way around. There we go. Oops. Until the lid comes off. And then you open up the legs, like so. Okay, and put it to one side. Please be very, very careful because the lids of cans can be incredibly sharp, and some of the nastiest cuts I've actually seen from students is because they've accidentally caught their hand on a lid, so, and the edge as well, so be very careful. I have now got my sauce back on the hob and I've got all my tomatoes and my passata added in. So when you stir it, okay, go all the way down to the bottom so you can actually feel the bottom of the saucepan, and you're going to move it back and forth so you're actually scraping the bottom, okay? Don't just stir it in the top because the bottom could be burning and you'd never know. Right, so always make sure you're scraping the bottom. Now, if you have fresh basil leaves, all you want to do is take them in your hand, tear them up and add them in. For your dry herbs, half a tablespoon is about right. So I'm going to take my half tablespoon measure, give it a little shake so it's about even, and pop it in. And then make sure that you've stirred in all those lovely herbs. This is where fresh basil really makes a difference, but if you don't have it, like I don't worry about it. Next we're going to add a little crack of black pepper. Now this is to taste, but a good amount is usually like that. Some people like it really peppery, but it's personal preference. And we're going to take a little bit of salt, and we want a good pinch of salt in there. There we go. And I'm going to stir that all in. We need to add salt to our food because our taste buds actually use salt to really help us pick up on flavours. If we don't have salt, it tastes very, very bland. It won't taste like very much at all, and actually it'll be a little bit acidic because of the tomatoes. So once we've given it a little stir, I'll put my spoon down. We need to let that simmer for around 20 minutes, okay, at least 15, around 20 minutes. We want some of the liquid to reduce down so it will look thicker. Now, at the moment it's on a high heat, on a 7, and I probably want to turn that down to maybe around a 4 or 5. You want it on a medium-low heat for a simmer. Okay, you'll know when it's simmering because there will be a few regular bubbles, but it won't be bubbling very vigorously. If there are lots and lots of bubbles, turn the heat down. If you don't see any bubbles at all or too few, turn the heat up. Okay, but we're going to come back in 20 minutes and make sure that you are stirring it periodically in that 20 minutes, maybe every 5 minutes or so. Give it a little stir, just make sure nothing's burning. And I'll see you back in 20. Oh, and in the meantime, you can be doing your washing up. So it's been just over 20 minutes. I had to keep an eye on it, turn the heat up and down as needed, make sure it was simmering the right amount. And you can see that it's thickened quite a bit. So it's nearly ready to be served, but we're going to do one last thing. Now, it's a real skill of chefs to be able to taste their food and make sure that it's actually ready to go out. So I'm going to keep my salt and my pepper on hand, and we are going to season to taste. This is something that it takes real practice. It's something that even I still actually trying to learn after doing so many years. But you're going to need a couple of things. We're going to take ourselves a clean teaspoon. Now I'm going to dip it in. I'm going to blow on it. Make sure that it's not hot, and then taste it. Okay, I can taste the seasoning, I can taste the herbs. It's still quite acidic and it's a little bit bland, so I'm actually going to take a little bit of salt and I'm going to add a little bit back in. So another pinch of salt in there. I think you could actually do with another little bit of black pepper, not too much though, I could taste the pepper, just a little bit. Give it another stir. Make sure all that salt is all mixed in. And I'm going to get myself a fresh teaspoon. Okay, don't use the same teaspoon you've used before if you're sharing it with friends and family, because obviously we don't want to cross-contaminate. So I'm going to take a fresh teaspoon, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Much better. Yeah, I can really taste the flavours in that a lot more now. So I hope you can see how simple that sauce was to make, and I'm keeping my dinner really simple tonight, and I'm having it with some whole wheat pasta, some beautiful fresh greens and leeks, and a little bit of sausage, and topped with a little sprinkle of cheese as well. So make sure that you make it part of a wholesome, nutritious meal, and I hope you enjoy making that with me. See you next time.